we're going to move on to the next topic. And this is probably going to be the hottest topic of all of them. And I preach it to more than anyone. It's the so-called ownership. And man, did a lot happen with the name ownership in there. And it all started with Cal Raleigh right after the Mariners got eliminated. Cal Raleigh took a shot at the ownership, like, hey, we got to spend some money if we got to compete. We have a good team, but I really want to win a World Series. And he really showed his heart of how much he really cares about the team. He wasn't trying to say the team sucks or anything. He's like, no, we just need some help, some resources. Now I understand why you don't want to say that to media as much as I loved him saying it, because some players might take that offensive. He's like, wait, you don't think I'm good enough?
Right.
But he did apologize the next day, but it was confirmed by Ryan Divish, and it's been denied several times where he was actually forced to do it. And I don't think it was even Service or Jerry DePoto that did it. I think it was actually John Stanton was like, hey, Cal Raleigh hurt my feelings. Jerry, take care of it. Scott, take care of it. And that's why when they were talking about it, they seemed like they just didn't really want to talk about it because, one, they don't want to insult their bosses, and two, what else are they gonna say? Like, what else can they really say? So, yeah, that whole thing started that whole thing, and we all know that John Stanton. It is evident that John Stanton really does need to open his checkbooks. Like when it all started, everyone had high hopes for John Stanton because it was like, oh, he can't be worse than like Howard Lincoln and Chuck Armstrong. He can't go below that. But honestly, he seems to be just like them. Just doesn't say he just does a good job staying away from the cameras. Like Howard Lincoln and Chuck Armstrong, they always wanted to be on the camera, especially when you had Howard Lincoln saying, and I know it verbatim, the goal of the Mariners is to not win a World Series. It is to field a competitive team year after year to put itself in position to win a World Series and hope that happens. And then 2 years later, you lose almost 100 games in 2004. But it's got to happen. He's got to spend the money if he wants to win. Yes, we know it's a business. We get it. You don't want to lose money and net them like the Oakland A's or anything like that. But you have the stadium. You have a constant growing market. And I know this because when I don't quit your day job, I get a lot of people from out of state actually moving here, and it's growing exponentially. The housing market's crazy. Tech companies are coming in. That means the market is there. We are not a small market anymore. We're not what we were in the 90s. We are a mid-tier market creeping to the top 10. So John Stanton really should spend that money, unless we could keep playing Moneyball. Then we could PO a lot of the other players. We might even not even lock them up, and then they're gone. So it could be another Griffey repeat. So that's my concerns of hopefully John Stanton listens. I don't think he will, obviously not, because all he's going to look at is 88 wins and a lot of fans showed up, which inflated by some Blue Jay fans, by the way. But any of your thoughts on this ownership? I mean, I think we're all on the same page that this ownership's got to spend money.
Yeah, I don't think anybody, I think that's the one thing Mariner fans are pretty united on, is not being a big fan of ownership. And I think me and you, out of all the Mariner YouTubers I see, are actually probably the most reasonable on it. We've both said, I have no problem with John Stanton making money. Like, I know some people like, oh, he has a right to try and make money. He bought a team. You should try and make money. But, it very much seems like with this team that it's very much just like what you said at the end, 188 games, got fans there. They did enough. Now, I'm hoping that this season, and maybe there's a blessing in disguise with them missing the playoffs, because let's say they get in. Let's say they win 89. Maybe they beat the Rangers Saturday. They get in. And then let's say Minnesota sweeps them. I don't know who they would have played. Minnesota sweeps them. And we're sitting there going, hey, back-to-back playoff seasons. We're back, baby. Like, talk about turning around. And then we don't get any money spent. And it's just like, oh, we made the playoffs, which would have been great. I would love to make the playoffs, but maybe there's a blessing in disguise to not missing it. It forces ownership to open up the checkbooks a little bit. And some of it's got to go on Jerry too, because I've heard conflicting reports. I'm not going to lie. I've heard that the ownership doesn't spend. I've also heard that, and I've defended Jerry. I'm fine with Jerry being back. I want that out there on the record. I'm okay with Jerry DePoto coming back next year. But I've also heard that Jerry thinks he's the smartest person in the room and wants to be the money ball and kind of outsmart people. So I'm never going to come on here and defend the ownership group, John Stanton, but there's a part of me that doesn't know which one it is. It's probably a little bit of both, to be honest. Probably a little bit of both.
Well, also you got to not only, it's not just both, but you also got to look at the fact of who hired Jerry Dipoto. But I think it was Howard Lincoln before. So, and then John Stanton. Yeah, it was Howard Lincoln because he was the CEO until 16, until the end of that ownership of Nintendo. But John Stanton had an opportunity to maybe clean house after 2018. Not saying that he should have. I mean, I do think he should have chosen a new manager should have been chosen after 2018 to be part of that rebuild process. But it's up to John Stanton if he wants to have a good GM or not. Like if Jerry Dipoto doesn't work out, who is he going to hire next? He's going to hire another Stapp, or is he going to hire another Bavasi and he will magically give him the payroll? Because let's not forget, somehow Pat Gillick and Woody Woodward, they had their hands tied throughout those contending years. When they were good, they were not allowed to spend the money. But Bill Bavasi, he was allowed to have a $100+ million payroll in 2008 and lose 100 games. I see that a lot of hypocrisy there. And back then, we actually got big names. Richie Sexton, big name. Beltray, big names. We actually were nailing the big names. But that's when we sucked.
It was the opposite. They were signing the wrong. I just want to respond to the comment. Have a great day. Made a comment, said Jerry said on 710 that he's able to spend at his discretion. I will say I take everything that everybody says with a grain of salt, because Jerry's not going to go on public and be like, oh man, I can't spend anything. Stanton doesn't let me. It's his boss. So he's going to say like, yeah, we've got all the tools. And that's right. I don't know. So it may very well be on Jerry, but I tend to put it a little bit on both, and we'll see what happens. Because I think if you don't get results this offseason, they all may be out of jobs. But like Rooftop said, where do you go with that? You know, you've got a decent core in place here. Do you hire the next Bill Bavasi or you know, where do you go? What do you do? And if the ownership is poor, then it's not going to matter who you hire unless you just are able to get like 6 Ronald Acuñas in the lineup through development, and that just, you know what I mean? Like, and they all take off, then sure, you can win, but you got to supplement it with something else. And like you said, it's so funny that Bavasi was the one GM that we've had really, and that I remember following, that was allowed to spend, and they were like the complete opposite. They were spending on players and then not developing anybody.
Yeah, and Pat Gillick should have been like, what the heck? Why was I given that kind of, why was I allowed to do that? But yeah, and the other thing I'm really concerned about is the stuff that Cal Raleigh said, and it's really being interpreted in many different ways, especially when you got AJ Przinsky involved in all that. It makes me think, like, if this publicity keeps going out, do the Mariners just trade Cal Raleigh just because John Stanton got his feelings hurt? Because it has happened before. Lou Piniella, after the 2002 season, he called out ownership saying that we need to spend the money to get us over to the next level. And then he gets traded away for Randy Wynn to the Tampa Bay Devil Rays. Oh, but to be fair, John Ellis, in the 2014 Mariners Hall of Fame induction for Lou Piniella, he did go, and that said in his Lou Piniella book, oh yeah, we should have went for it in 2002. Yeah, 12 years too late, fool. So there's that. And let's not forget 2003, Jeff Nelson, when he called out the front office for the inactivity of the 2003 season, where Oakland was somehow able to pull deals, Billy Beane. The Yankees got Aaron Boone, and there was a hope at the time that maybe Aaron Boone goes to third base for the Seattle Mariners to play with his brother Brett Boone, because Jeff Cirillo was not the guy. Oh, man. And then he gets traded away. So I'm thinking, does history repeat itself? Does Cal Raleigh get traded all over what he said? Because now they do have the excuse of like, oh yeah, we got Harry Ford. That's all. It's all good. And also, I think it would be a PR.
Yeah. I think you can get away with it with a reliever trading him. Trading Cal, especially after that, I actually think in more cases now they can't. And I don't want them to trade Cal, but it would be such a PR nightmare. I agree. Have a great day. Brett Boone did rule. It would be such a PR. They would get it might, if they traded Cal, because of those comments, you actually might get backlash. You may see attendance go down. I truthfully, if they did trade Cal, even if they got a good deal back, I might get, and I've been very patient. I have defended Scott. I've defended the front office more than most people. I would probably be done, to the point of like, this is utter insanity if they did that. So I almost think they can't, just because I'm sure there's some people in that organization that want to after that comment, but it would be such a nightmare for them if they did that. I mean, I know winning cures all, but I can't imagine the backlash fans would give them if they did that. And it would be well deserved.
It would be worse than the Kevin Mather situation for sure. That one was really bad. And just to think, now this is me going off on a tangent. I can't believe it took like the way people interpreted Kevin Mather. Now, granted, he said horrible things. Like basically, it was just the stuff he said just shouldn't have been said on camera. That's something you say in your meetings with everyone else. But the age that we're in that cancel culture. It literally took cancel culture to get Kevin Mather out, and I knew that this guy was terrible. Actually, you know what? Cancel culture in some ways did save the Mariners, but the fact that it went that far, he was allowed to have a job for that long, and Kevin Mather was already in some kind of trouble with women. Yeah. How was he allowed to keep a job like that? That's the thing. That's where I have the problems with John Stanton, where he seems like he doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't know what's going on. He just looks at the numbers.
And it stinks because we can talk about Jerry, Justin, Scott. We can have those conversations. Nothing you can do about the ownership group. You know what I mean? Like, so it's such a tough debate because we can't, like, you don't like Jerry, fine. Jerry can get fired. You don't like Scott, Scott can get fired. You don't like Tommy LaStella, he can be DFA'd. Nothing you can do about the ownership. We just have to hope that they make some good moves in the off season and get right and get going and can win it. You know, I mean, it stinks. Sorry, try not to, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, another thing we can do is we can always build our YouTube. How about this? We have you and me build a YouTube channel. Maybe Mojo and Couch, maybe they grow into something, and we'll all band together and buy this team, because at least we agree on something. The ownership is the problem. So we'll band together, buy the team, and do it the way we want to. Now, granted, there's probably going to be some power struggles within at least a couple of us, but
we have to hire a GM.
Well, not only that, but it's about like, how would we do this? How should we do this? Who are we going to choose? So, but if we had at least the two of us, if we could grow our YouTube channels to more than Mr. Beast level, which I don't see happening anytime soon, then we can maybe do something like that. But that's just wishful thinking.
Tell your friends, your brothers, your sisters, your mothers to subscribe to us. If you know 1 million people, if everybody in here tells 10 people to sub, then there we go.
Yeah, then we can save the Mariners and bring a World Series championship. And
I'm going to make a short says save the Mariners, get me 1 million subs so I can buy the team, and then we'll go win a World Series.
We'll go win a World Series, and we'll be remembered for it, and we'll be immortalized.
I'll buy everybody for you.
Yeah. Well, that's how I wanted to close the ownership portion of it.